everybody, I'm Sinclaire and I'm with the Prairielands Groundwater Conservation District. And today I'm here in our water education trailer. Now this trailer is what we like to call our mobile classroom. It features many different exhibits and models that teach us all about groundwater, where it comes from, how we use it, and also how we can help conserve and protect our groundwater resources. So today we're going to be talking all about groundwater. And whenever we talk about groundwater, we have to talk about aquifers. So what is an aquifer? An aquifer is a porous body of rock and sediment that is saturated with groundwater. And to give us an idea of what these aquifers look like, I have a model here behind me that features aquifers that we would see below us if we could look underground. If we were able to see hundreds and thousands of feet below us right now, we would see these aquifers below Johnson, Hill, Ellis, and Somervell Counties. So looking here at this model, we have two different aquifers that I want to talk about. This one up here is the Woodbine Aquifer, and it is a minor aquifer of Texas. But don't be fooled, even though it is a minor aquifer, these aquifers are huge. They stretch across many different regions and areas of the state. So this aquifer is also what we call an unconfined aquifer, and that has to do with this layer that goes right through the middle right here. So this layer is what we call an impermeable layer, and that means that water can't move through it. So as water starts to soak in and make its way down into the aquifer, it can't continue past this layer. But over here, this is our Trinity Aquifer, which is made up of all these different formations through here, and it is a confined aquifer. And that is because this layer is on the top of this aquifer. So over here, that water soaks in, makes its way underground, and it can't continue past this layer. Over here, as water makes its way down through the surface, as that water table increases, it is going to create pressure because it kind of has a ceiling on it because of this layer. So we have two different types of aquifers here, and we're going to talk about the way that groundwater makes its way through these aquifers. So how does this water get underground? Groundwater makes its way underground because of the water cycle. The water cycle affects every part of our life, but it also plays a huge role in our aquifers. And that is because as precipitation falls back down to earth, part of it is going to soak in and make its way down into these aquifers. So what we're going to do is create a little simulation, and I'm going to make some rain, and we're going to watch how this water makes its way underground. And remember, over here we have this layer that the water can't move through. But there's a lot of surface area right here as well. So now that our rain is starting to fall down to earth, we can see that we've got some surface water that's forming. We've also got some water soaking in over here. And you can see this water level right here. So now that our rainstorm has come to an end, we can definitely see a difference between these two aquifers. So over here, this aquifer is very saturated. We also have some surface water up here, which is lakes and rivers and streams, the water that we can see on the surface of the ground. Over here, this aquifer doesn't have any surface water that's formed, and this water has a lot farther to move as it makes its way underground because this is such a much larger aquifer. So not only does this aquifer have potential to capture rainwater and have some of this surface water, but it also has some potential to capture things maybe we don't want to end up in our water. So we have to talk about pollution and protecting the quality and the safety of our water. So there are two types of pollution that can affect our groundwater and surface water. The first one I want to talk about is non-point source pollution. So our non-point source pollution is maybe sometimes just an accident or an oversight. Maybe something leaks or spills or drips, or something gets washed away in the rain. If we use fertilizers, pesticides, chemicals outdoors, even on the sidewalk or the driveway. If we get a heavy rain or we rinse it off with a garden hose, some of that water and those contaminants could soak in underground with that water. So if you look right here, we've got some of this orange dye that's right here on the surface of the ground. So this represents that non-point source pollution. Now, even though it's up here in the surface, and also we've got a little bit in our surface water, we're talking about our aquifers and our groundwater. So that pollution is up here and our groundwater is down here. How does that pollution affect our groundwater? So one thing I want to point out is these structures that you see right here within this model. These are our water wells. And a water well is what allows us to pump groundwater from way down deep underground and bring it up to the surface. So what happens if I turn on these water wells? They're going to start pumping water from down here in the aquifer, but let's watch and see what happens to this pollution whenever I turn on this water well. So now we are drawing water from down here in the aquifer. We've turned our water well on. You can see that this pollution is starting to make its way down into that aquifer. So not only do we have to think about pollution from the surface of the ground, but also pollution from underground too. So I mentioned that there were two types of pollution I wanted to talk about. The other one is point source pollution. So point source pollution is much more concentrated and direct. We can pinpoint where it's coming from. So I mentioned our water wells, and a water well is something that is very important, especially if you have one at your home that provides water for your household, for cooking, cleaning, drinking, showering, and you have to take care of those water wells. So that's why regular maintenance and inspection is so important. For example, let's say that we have an older water well over here that hasn't been inspected or maintained, and it's been damaged and is starting to leak some contamination into our aquifer. So look over here, and we're going to be on the lookout for any pollution that makes its way underground. For those of us who don't have a water well at home, this same idea can be applied if we think about any underground plumbing or water lines. That's why we don't want to flush anything or put anything down the drain that could damage or burst any septic lines or plumbing or any type of water line, because the same kind of thing can happen. So if you look over here, we've got a little bit of this blue pollution that's starting to sneak out underground from this damaged well. So this point source pollution is a lot more concentrated, and it seems like a little bit smaller section than what we saw over here with our non-point source pollution. But remember that we've got some water wells down here too. So I'm going to turn on this water well, and we're going to see what happens to that contamination in that aquifer. So remember, this water makes its way through the cracks and the spaces underground. So it's going to move here through these different cracks and the areas through these formations. And now look, this pollution has flumed out and it's making its way now into this well. So this well is drawing some contaminated water. And again, you can always tie this back to any underground water lines or plumbing. If something happens to those, it could seep some of that yucky water and contamination underground, and then it could affect other water sources. So not only do we have to think about the quality of our water, but also quantity. So now we're going to talk a little bit about conserving water indoors. As you saw earlier, our aquifers are affected by rainfall. And right now we are in a time of the year where we're getting a significant amount of rain. But what might happen come July and August and September? We may not have as much rain, but our water demands really don't change. We still need water, and we use it for many different things. And speaking of that, we're going to talk about some of the different ways that we use water in our homes. So conserving water is just as simple as breaking down our daily or weekly routines and thinking about how we use water, and then also how we can find ways to conserve. So when we look at some of the main appliances in our home, there are several that stand out as using a lot of water. So our washing machines, they can use sometimes up to 20, maybe 40 gallons of water per load, depending on how old they are. So one thing we want to keep in mind whenever we do laundry is we want to try and make a complete load of laundry. We don't want to just wash a few socks and one t-shirt for a long time with a lot of water. So try and put together a complete load of laundry. So instead of just a few things, we're going to try to put together a complete load, and we're going to put it in the washer. And we're also going to look and see if our washing machine has an eco wash cycle. If it does, this means that that's going to use less water, less electricity, but it's still going to get our clothes nice and clean. So this same thing goes for whenever we're loading the dishwasher. We don't want to wash just a few dishes in the dishwasher at once. We want to fill the dishwasher. We want to fill the dishwasher all the way and run it on a short cycle based on how clean or dirty those dishes are. So another place that we use a lot of water in the house is with our sinks. So right here I have a sink, and one way that we use a lot of water is simply just by not turning the faucet off whenever we're brushing our teeth or we're scrubbing our hands or washing our face. So typically a standard faucet runs about 2.2 gallons per minute if you leave it running. So the dentists recommend that we brush our teeth for 2 minutes twice a day. So while you are brushing your teeth for those recommended 2 minutes, if you leave that faucet running, you could waste over 4 gallons of water. Now multiply that by how many other people you live with who are also brushing their teeth twice a day. It can really start to add up. So we want to make sure that we turn the faucet off while we brush our teeth. While we wash our hands, we want to turn it off. And any other time that we're not directly using that water, just make sure and shut that sink off so that it'll help conserve water. You also want to make sure that your sink is working properly. You don't want it to be leaking, dripping, because it might seem like a little thing, but if this faucet is leaking about 1 drop every second, it could waste up to 3,000 gallons of water in 1 year. And that's a lot of water that could be conserved just by simply fixing that leak. So the same thing goes too for our toilets. These can use a lot of water. Some of the standard toilets use between 3.5 to 7 gallons per flush. Some of the newer model toilets that are a little more water efficient, they can use around 2 gallons to maybe even less than 1 gallon per flush. But we want to make sure that we only flush the toilet after we go to the bathroom. You don't want to use the toilet as a trash can. 1, because they use a lot of water, and 2, because like I said, you don't want to put anything down the drain or the toilet that could harm the environment, that could affect our plumbing and our water lines. It could be really hard to get some of those contaminants out, or if you put anything solid down there, it could cause some damage. You also want to look and make sure that your toilet isn't running, it's not leaking anywhere, because if that water is constantly running in that toilet, it's just like leaving the faucet on. It can use a lot of water. So you also want to think about how long you're in the shower. A regular 15-minute shower can use about 30 gallons of water. So finding ways that you can cut back on your shower time will help save significant amount of water. Even if you just shut the shower off while you're soaping your hair, lathering up your body, that will help save water because the shower isn't running all the time. Also, using a shower timer or setting an alarm or finding some unique way to shorten the amount of time that you're in the shower will help conserve water. So all of this water is used by us. It goes down the drain, we flush the toilet, and we think, okay, we are done with that water. It's out of sight, out of mind. But that water still has a journey that it has to go on after we're done with it. So that's why it's so important that we are careful about what we put down the drain and what we flush, because that water is either going to go to our city sewer or it might go to a septic system depending on where you live and what type of plumbing you have. But by reducing the things that we put in our water now, the less damage that it might cause to the environment and the less natural resources and work we'll have to put in later on down the road to treat that water and disinfect it so it can be used again. So I hope you guys have learned something and you've enjoyed this presentation. Thank you, and we look forward to seeing you at an event soon.